Hello, welcome. So we have with us today Craig Lord, hopefully up and coming Mayor of Auckland. That's what we're all cheering for. So we're going to get Craig to just introduce himself and just tell us a little bit about himself. So welcome.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Sure, a little bit about me. Well, I've been living in Auckland since I was 15 years old. I moved up here by myself when I applied and was accepted for a job as an engineer and a little schoolboy in a workshop. So moved up to Auckland. I met my wife 32 years ago. We've been married 26 years. We've got a 24-year-old daughter. Son turns 21 next month or October, so it's very close. 2 dogs, 6 chickens. So I'm an engineer.
One black chicken.
Yeah,
I've seen that one.
Yeah. So I'm an engineer by trade, but roughly 20 years ago, I changed career paths. I left the engineering side of things, which was an advanced trade of diagnostics and maintenance in engineering. So it's a little bit blah, 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 but basically I kept production lines inside factories operating. That was my thing. Yeah. But then I flicked the switch, and about 20 years ago, I started up my own business doing freelance media, which predominantly revolves around motorsport, but generally lends itself to other sporting things as well. And it's not news media, which is good because I'm too frustrated with news media. I'm more events, storytelling of people's adventures out there with their race teams or their car racing or whatever other sport I happen to be asked to go work with. So in a nutshell, that's who I am.
So that's interesting. And so what's pushed you in the direction of being the mayor or
politics?
The mayor of Auckland? Yes, politics. What's pushed you in that direction?
Yeah, I still get people going, "What are you thinking? What are you doing, mate?"
Yeah.
But it was almost a dare back in 2018 when a mate of mine said, well, we would barbecue. The barbecue talk got to rates. The rates talk started to get angry, as it always does when people start to talk about that. And he said, well, go on, put your hand up, mate, go sort it out. So I did. And it was basically a dare. And then in 2019, as an absolute unknown in the public world, aside from whatever I'd done in media, so people with events I'd worked in knew me, the general population didn't. And as a complete unknown, I ended up getting 3rd in the elections. And so my mate and I went, well, you better carry on. So yeah, all right, we'll give it a shot. So that's why the thing continued. But really it was put up your hand to make the change, to make things better, because I like fixing things and I like solving people's issues and problems. That's the engineer in me. But I also like helping people in whatever different forms I can do that. And that's from me doing DIY for friends and family or helping fix their car. Or I still have mates who ask me to come help them with their factory stuff. So I still do that. And a lot of clients in the media world are like, how can we do this? How do we do that? Can you help us? And that's really who I am as a person. So it's a big step going from doing those things into helping as a politician. But I want to. And when my mate and I were talking about it, it's like, well, if I get on the inside and I can make the changes that I believe in and that benefits everyone who's living in Auckland, well, it's just a bigger extension of what I like doing by default. So really that's what it is. It's just to help. And if people want the help, they'll vote for me.
So you are obviously a solutions-based person, but I mean, I've been following politics. I'm not, really politically minded, but it's just more that I'm frustrated with what's going on in this country. So I'm following people who do have, or maybe can help with solutions. So just a disclaimer for you, I don't like the media, and I find that they are. It's just hard to explain it, but they've just got a rhetoric, a narrative, and I feel like I am always for the underdog. My group is based on it being a bully-free community, so it's all of the women know they can come there and really share their hearts without being bullied or attacked like you do get online. So you know, the culture has been really firmly built over multiple many years, and so I'm really all about, you know, the underdog. We have had journalists come into our group and write up disgusting things about me and us, and you know, some of them have been good, but I've seen what journalists can do and how they can twist your words and make you look like the enemy. So when I noticed, you know, I'd been following your page for a couple of months, or a month or two, yeah, and I just noticed that you kept getting ditched from everything. Like, you'd go to turn up to something and they'd be like, well, that's not happening anymore, this person's pulled out, or you can't go onto that show or into the paper or whatever. And I was like, okay, I smell a rat. I smell a rat. What are the media scared of? So what I want to know, and what I have gleaned about you so far just from watching from a distance, is that you don't mince your words. I like that. I feel like people who are happy to be openly, like, even sarcastic, not trying to be too professional, I just feel like I can trust that because they're not putting up some kind of facade. So I feel like I can trust that. But you know, like, there's lots of different things about the media, and I've heard them say about you. And one thing that I think maybe puts a real twist on who you are is the question of what is your ethnicity. So just tell us a little bit about what your ethnicity actually is, and why are they trying to make you appear to be a racist?
Ah, yes, the co-governance. That's where it's all come from. So, yeah, co-governance. Like, I'm very simplistic in my belief of that. I believe in taking advice, consulting, discussing issues with anybody of any race, creed, religion, gender, color, whatever they are. To me, I'm fairly colorblind, and everyone should be equal. So when it comes to governance, when you are voted in to control an entity over the population, you should never be in there by DNA. I call it DNA democracy. And that's wrong. You should never have a race-based governance. And so for me, co-governance means you have a bunch of elected people, and then you have a DNA bunch of people who join forces to govern. And that is not democracy. That's not you are voted in by the people for the people. That's half of you are, and the other half because you're Maori.
Yeah.
And where that has come from in the where they try to knock me down on it is saying you're racist. Well, it's pretty difficult to say when I'm Maori that I'm a racist. I actually believe in equal rights. That's why I say what I say, and I'm not scared to do it. So I do get called, and I was in the 2019 by Tamahiri, a plastic Maori. He did not like that I didn't agree with him on his wants for Maori. I'm sure Willie Jackson and Calvin Davis wouldn't approve of me for sure. But I actually did the DNA test this year, of all times. You know, I'm 50 now. And I thought, well, and one of my other friends, she pushed me into it. She said, go on, just go do it. So I did. So I spat in the tube and sent it off to Ireland. And eventually it came back, and I'm 39% Maori.
Wow.
61% mongrel. And that's UK, Norwegian, Welsh, Irish. What else is there? I think the Norwegian bit's cool because that means there's a bit of Viking there.
That might be where your sense of humour comes from, all those muttly mongrels.
Yeah, I'm just a mongrel, but I'm 61%. And that means by DNA, I'm less than half Maori. So what do they use as their gauge? You know, but 39% is actually still quite a lot. Recently this year, after that, I found where my iwi is from. It's nice to know. It's like, okay, that's cool, but I don't believe it should be a point of governance, and I don't believe I should use it in my political, which I haven't. And it's not that I'm purposely saying to the media or the voters, I'm not Maori. It's just that I'm not saying you can vote for a Maori mayor.
Yeah.
Because I'm an Aucklander and a New Zealander and a Kiwi, and I've always been that. And that's what I promote, that I am a New Zealander. And if you want me, then you vote for me as a New Zealander, a Kiwi, an Aucklander. That when the media started, and they haven't done it for a little while, and I do wonder if it's because, yeah, well, I wonder if it's because at all the debates I've brought this up and they've started picking up on it and gone, actually, we should back off a bit.
Yeah.
But in the early time of Efeso Collins running, it was Pacifica Mayor. But in the last couple of months, that stopped. And I think it's because I've been pretty loud about saying, you're not saying I'm a Māori mayor, and I don't want you to, because I'm a Kiwi and Aucklander. So sorry, it took so long to explain it all, but that's what I believe in, and that's my stance on it.
And so do you think, like, I mean, this kind of shows your balance really, and also that you're quite secure in yourself, and you know, because actually if you did take the stance of being a Maori, then you probably would, maybe that would give you the advantage getting in, but you're literally saying you're for all of the people. You're not choosing a side, you're here for all of the people, and you don't want to get voted in as a particular race based on your DNA. I like that.
And it's the same with when I've had interviews with different groups from different ethnicities, Indian, Chinese, and 2, 3, 4 different Pacifica outlets. Every one of them asked me the same question: what will you do for us? And I've been very clear in my answer: nothing different to what I'll do for the rest of Auckland.
Yeah.
And they actually, they stop for a little second and they go, okay, yeah. Instead of giving them narratives to make them feel good and, you know, I'll look after you because you're Pacifica and you need it. And they liked the fact that I was straight up and said, no, you're colorblind. I'm colorblind. So that means you're an Aucklander. You'll get exactly the same as everyone else.
That's so good. I mean, and it's not limited to race really, is it? Because we look at the last actual elections and we saw the blimmin', you know, all the criminals in jail getting being given the vote, and that's sort of like this whole genre of people suddenly are like, yay, Labour gave us the vote, let's vote for Labour. So again, it's just kind of like, you know, twisting and pulling people into your little gang, I suppose, eh? So you're actually being really, I guess it's a little bit dangerous, you know, politically. If you want the votes, you might be, you know, just get people on board by saying, I'm going to do this for you and I'm going to do that for you. But one of my questions here was, how should we trust you? Because all politicians, well, the majority of politicians will go into any election telling you everything that you want to hear. But how many of them actually walk out their promises or even give it a go, you know, of walking out their promises? So I like the fact that you're going into it without, you know, giving one lot of people, you know, excessive hope for what you're going to do for them. So I think that, you know, makes you look a little bit more trustworthy. But what would you say makes you more trustworthy?
That I'm not a politician, I think is the first point. And I would love to see more grassroots, blue collar people like myself putting their hands up to run for politics. Maybe not central as a starting point. Do it like I am local government. Of course, I'm jumping in a pretty deep pool going for Mayor of Auckland as it, rather than starting off in the lower segments of politics. But I think tradies, grassroots workers, us who are at the coalface every day, small business, we're the normal people. We probably would be the best people to run a city for the rest of the population, because we are not politicians. And one of my favorite sayings, and I can't remember where it came from, but I used it in 2019. I still use it today. Politicians like to think that they can solve our problems, but one day the people will wake up and realize that politicians created our problems. And that's how I believe. So let's not be a politician. Let's just be a leader. Let's be someone that wants to look after the people, serve the people, and run it that way, rather than looking at it as politics.
I agree. I've had this discussion before when I interviewed Bristow Farms about, just what they were going through as farmers, because there's all of the horrible, all the red tape that's involved with farming now. It makes it impossible to even live as a farmer.
Yeah.
So many suicides in farming and all that sort of thing. And they said that, this is horrible for us because we've got these politicians coming and looking at our land. They don't understand it. They don't know what we actually do day to day. And they're telling us pugging can't be any, it's got to be this level and not that level. And they're trying to explain things to these politicians. And these politicians, they get together in their little round table with their little latte and in their leased buildings, and they make decisions for people that they know nothing at all about. And
Correct.
so I totally am so on board with people coming into politics that actually know the pain of the people. So I love that stance that you're coming in on. So so that gets a tick. Thank you.
Well, we'll see. One of the extensions on that is Auckland Council has panels, and I assume other councils around the country do as well.
Yeah.
I can't remember all 7, but there's disabilities, elderly, youth, rainbow. There's probably a ethnicity one. There's 7 anyway. I want to create another one because I don't think there is one existing for animal management. I think there needs to be a panel for that. But in these panels, you have the grassroots coalface people. And to use, say, let's go disability as an example. You make sure that representatives of the community in the disability are on that panel, not so-called experts who are not embedded in that particular community. And it's the same. So it's an extension of what you're saying about politics, that we get people in positions of power who actually don't know anything about what they're doing. And I've been very forward in saying, and I did to the dog rescue people, I said, yeah, we need to create a panel, but don't expect me to lead it because I'm not in that area of expertise. I haven't dealt with the rescue dogs. I need you in there to tell me and tell the people the best things to do. And it would be the same if we had a farming panel. And maybe I will, because rural is so big in Auckland, and I'm an ex-rural boy. So to have a rural panel and have some farmers actually sitting on that table with us, a few councillors, saying, this is what will work for us, that won't. We pay your wages, you serve us, this is what we want. And that's what it should be.
Oh, that would be brilliant. Farmers getting represented, and market gardeners. I've been listening to a lot of the stuff about all the legislation, all the red tape around what they can do. It's making it impossible. We already have this, economic crisis on our hands, and now we're going to have food crisis. And when they stop us, in the dairy company, making it impossible for them to, for us to have dairy. What the heck? We have no food, no money, no.
And excuse me. I remember back in 2019, I was fighting. Well, I wasn't fighting because I wasn't in power at the time. I was making a lot of noise about how roughshod the rural community and how they're walked over. They're treated so badly because the rates are sucked in from them, and they never get a good return on their rates investment. But the biggest one I was pushing for was to protect the elite soils, our growing soils. And it was getting some airtime, but not a lot. That's thankfully grown this year. There's a lot more of the general population who are realizing we're losing our growing soils, and they're now starting to understand what farmers are going through. And it's not like the farmers hate doing what they do. They love growing food. They actually enjoy it. And they need help to provide for us. So the good news is, the really good news is, this month, the government, it's probably one of the only things I've been happy with the current government, is they've announced a new bit of legislation coming in that councils can rezone and protect these soils. So I'm yet to read it fully, but that's an exciting thing. And that's part of how we've got to look after the rural. We really do. So yes, there will be a rural panel. You've instigated that.
Love that. Yay, hurrah me. Okay, so let's just ask you some of the kind of a bit more generic questions based on what's going on at the moment. I haven't watched the news. I actually haven't had a TV for like 10 years. But you know what? You always hear what you need to hear. without watching every scare blimmin' mongering thing going on TV. But I want to ask you about what you would do or how you would manage the current crime rate and the ridiculousness of all these ram raids and things that are happening at the moment. What would be your solution to that? Solutions, man?
Okay, first up, council is not a security firm.
Yeah.
And the population needs to understand that that is not the council's job. The council's job is to lobby government, advocate for its people, and say, why are you not providing the policing and the social services to our city? Do your job.
Yes.
And that's the power that the mayor has and the council has, particularly in Auckland, to say to the central government, do your job. You're not providing for Auckland. What council can do to try and assist is the core services of a council, which is what I'm all about. So we could build more basketball courts, sport and recreational facilities. We could help the community groups that try to look after our troubled youth by saying to them, okay, you're not a dancing class, you're not a yoga class, you're not a choir practice group. You're doing something that is going to help the youth and community, so you won't get charged the same amount to use a council building to hold your meetings and use those facilities. And that's where councillors can step in. What else can we do? We can also advise the business groups to say, look, you might need to hire private security. This is how it's worked over here. We can help you get the ball rolling, but we can't use ratepayer money for this. You've got to pay for it yourself. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. And that's what some of the business groups do around Auckland. They already do that. And more of that needs to happen. The council can also assist a business. If a business comes up and says, I want to put bollards in front of my shop. Well, there's issues here because you're now putting bollards on a footpath, which has its own problems. So council should go to that shop very quickly and with a person that can do the underground services sensing and say, no, there's gas lines or there's water or there's sewer or there's fiber here. You can't put bollards here, but you can there. However, that's going to interfere with disabled or traffic management or, so there's that sort of consulting. We can do that as a council and not charge them a fortune to do it. Just go in and say, look, a couple of $100 for our time. This is what you can and can't do. There's one little point though that I've been thinking over for the last month that hasn't really been brought up. I might as well with you. Is if bollards are put in front of a shop and Auckland Transport has to get some work done in the footpath or that road right there and the bollards have to be ripped out, who pays to reinstate them? So it's another thing that has to be discussed because now the shop owner will go, well, I've already paid to put them in. You're pulling them out. You pay to put them back in. And council by rights could almost say, no, they're your property in our property. It's your. So those things have to be worked through. They sound minor, but there could be issues. So there's all those sort of things. So another long story short, the council's not a security firm, but our job is to help where we can, but lobby government. Yeah,
that's so good, putting the pressure on the government. I also know, well, no, can't say I know, but have heard and I believe that, a lot of the trouble with the youth is they're actually being prospected by gangs now because a few things, got the highest rate of children, well, not children, young adults on benefits. Then they're not really being incentivized to go back to work. When they go back to work, it's, there was a lot of mandate stuff as well that have caused people to stay out of jobs. And it's just, I actually feel like, because I have a 19-year-old son and I have seen him come out of the end of school, college with the whole COVID situation, and he reacted to his first vaccination, so I wouldn't let him get another one. So therefore he couldn't go into a job like he wanted to. So, and I just saw him get really bluesy. I'm not saying he is depressed because at least he's got a happy environment to live in, but I actually could look at that situation and see how these young kids are getting they feel hopeless. So they're getting, so when they get prospected, it's just that's what I reckon a lot of these ram raids are about.
Very much so. And that's why it's a government issue because of the social services. But if council can say, look, we've got these facilities here, because the old saying of play sport, not in court, That's true.
Yeah.
That's the only court they should be in, a sports
Yeah.
court.
Yeah.
And if we provide those and have those easily available, and the upkeep on them is done nice, and we look after them and they're well lit and well maintained, that will help. It's not the end answer.
Yeah.
The end answer is our social issues, which is a government problem. But council can step in where it can and say, well, okay, well, here's a skate park, here's some more basketball courts, squash facilities, whatever, and we'll try and make it as cheap as possible to operate and maintain. So yeah, that's what we can do. But social services is the problem.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so speaking of the money that you can spend and would like to spend and how to keep costs down for people who really need it, where do you think you could actually manage costs better with like unnecessary council spending? What do you think? What do you see as something that's unnecessary at the moment and that you would change?
Well, I'm very much about necessities over niceties. And a few people have gone, huh? And basically it means let's stop the vanity projects for now until we know we can afford them. And a good example of that is statues, artwork. Now, whilst they are a feel-good factor, I've got the bug today. Whilst they're a feel-good factor and we need them, you've got to treat it like a household budget. Do you need it? Or do you just want it?
Yeah.
And I want to put the needs ahead of the wants. An example I use is if you've got a 32-inch TV and it works, but you want a 70-inch and can't afford it, you don't go get it. If you can afford it and there's benefit in having it, yes, let's do it. But it's got to be matched up for that. So we need to prioritize core services. And that's another issue, because somebody might say artwork is a core service. Okay, debate time. And that's the adult conversation we have to have. But to me, a core service is roads maintained, footpaths, curbs cleaned, drains cleaned, culverts drained out, the rivers kept maintained and dredged. And the perfect example of that is after the massive Kumiu floods last year, the council admitted in their review, if they had have dredged the rivers properly, it would have mitigated most of the flooding.
Unbelievable.
So that's got to happen.
Yeah.
And that's where I see a lot of our expenses going, is into vanity projects. I know that in 2019, I uncovered a footpath that was built through a North Shore park. It was only around 500 meters long and it was millions of dollars. And when I got the information back, it's because there was consultants, there was engineering reports, then contractors and it just kept growing. It's a concrete footpath. So that's where I can see a lot of the savings. It lends itself to the question where I've been getting over the campaign, what can you do about the cost of living crisis? Basically, the council can do nothing. They don't control the price of, apart from the regional fuel tax, they don't control the price of fuel, butter, eggs, milk, cheese. We have nothing to do with that. What we can do is keep the rates increases as low as possible. That's all we can do. And I want to do that by removing the inefficiencies of a budget, and I want to treat it just like a household budget or a small business budget. No different. It's just scale, but it's the same thing. And so if you're going to get a plumber in, well, you might want to compare prices. And if you're going to have your insurance, well, compare the different insurance providers. Same with electricity, everything we do. Now, council has done that with its phone plans, its IT, and its insurances. Good stuff. Big ticket items, well done. Pretty easy to negotiate new prices on that. Where they haven't done it is in the contracts. Now, the contractors are basically the people we pay to maintain our city, to keep it clean, tidy, functioning, maintenance, adding to it. But it's a rort. And that system needs to change, because we spend around $1 billion a year. We give that to an overseas contracting company. They subcontract out to some locals who subcontract, and everyone clips a ticket. So instead of a $5,000 job, you've got a $50,000 job. And that's what's been happening. So the way I want to change that, and it's a big task, but I think it'll be bloody awesome, is preferred contractors are local. So
Yes.
if we can,
Yes.
everyone's thinking, okay, which suburb do I live in? And they say to themselves, how cool would it be to have local guys and girls looking after my suburb?
Totally.
That would be so brilliant, because
Yeah.
there's two advantages here, massive advantages. One, there will be pride in the work,
Yeah.
because the contractor will look after their own community with pride. So
Yeah.
you get a once-off job.
Mm.
Occasionally mistakes happen.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's warranty claim.
Mm.
But generally, good job. Secondly, saving money, big dollars,
Mm.
because now the council pays that local contractor directly, no parent company. So you know that a big industry isn't creating all these little contractors.
Yeah.
We deal directly with mum and dad contractor down the road,
Mm.
local jobs for local people. And if a particular suburb has a project that needs doing and they don't have a contractor, then the local boards talk to each other and they go, well, we do in our one. So here's a perfect example to finish on this. I found out in 2019 that one of the glaziers, who was a preferred contractor to Auckland Council, was repairing a window in Warkworth, and the contractor came from Pukekohe. So they travel an hour and a half, 2 hours to fix a window and then travel all the way back. That is what we are paying for. Well, I'm sure there are glass people up in Warkworth.
Yeah,
so
I'm pretty sure there's a couple of glass companies up there, actually.
Yeah. And so it's things like that. And just silly things like the $1.3 million that Aucklanders have just spent putting a public toilet into Wellsford. $1.3 million. That's 2 houses.
Yeah.
And apparently it came from Gisborne.
It's one.
We didn't even use local people to build it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
What's going on? So anyway, that's how I want to save money. I want to clean up the expenditure that's going on internally that people ignore.
Yeah. So
that's where we'll find it.
Signing off on these vanity projects? Like we've got down in Orewa, you know, this blimmin', I mean, it's a pretty thing, a piece of artwork. It was a couple of $100,000.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who signs off on that stuff? I mean, it's right in front of the beach. The beach was beautiful by itself.
I'm pretty sure it's local board.
Yeah. And why?
And yeah. And so that's why I want to change the way local boards work. They've got to get a lot more permission from the locals before they spend the money on things. And they've got to look at everything, to me, of niceties versus necessities.
Yeah.
That's going to take some time to get into the system and make them understand that that's their job. And yeah, it's a problem that needs addressing.
Yeah. And it sounds like a big problem that's going to take some time to unpack. I like how you say get permissions from the locals, because I mean, even just with that example, I know there were so many people like, what the heck are you doing? You know, Orewa Beach, they constantly are pressing that sand down and trying to pushing the walls back. And I don't know how many gazillions dollars they spend on that, because they took all the rocks away. And they're like, it's too expensive to put anything in there to, you know, to keep the, I don't even know what it is, to keep everything from flooding. But yet they keep on driving that sand up, and that must cost them a ton of money. It's like, who are these people? We're like, what is wrong in their brains? Who are these people?
Yeah. And they've put that seawall project off again. So it's been delayed again. And I don't know why, because down in Howick, they solved it very quickly. And so basically, if I was in office now and I found out this was happening, I'd go to the people in Howick and say, who did you use? Right. Get in your car, get up to Orewa, and let's start talking. Let's get it done. And that's what's got to happen. Simplistic problem solving rather than ferreting around spending our money in silly places. And one of the things with the local boards is I want to give them more power, but they need to be more public. There's so many people out there who don't even know a local board exists or what they do. And that's because all they rely on is an email or a bit of social media to say, we're having a meeting, come and see us, or give your feedback. What I want them to do is do pop-ups every 2 months in their area. They go to a mall, the town square, library, retirement village, wherever, and they sit there for 4 hours with big signs and flyers. And then after maybe a year, the local population will go, I know what the local board does now, and I know who they are. And when the local board then says, we want to build a statue, there's way more people engaged, so they can get better feedback on whether it should happen or not. But they've got to go to the people more.
So actually speaking of this whole, getting permissions from the people, where was my question here about, so if you become the mayor, are you largely free to make your own decisions? I know you said that you can push back on the government and you can do all that sort of thing, but are you controlled by the policies and legislation of this government? Are your hands tied in any way that you just wouldn't be able to do the job that you want to?
Yes and no. The mayor doesn't actually have a lot of power.
Yeah.
The mayor has a lot of influence
Yeah.
from that office. There's around about, I think, 18 staff inside that mayoral office. I suspect with Phil Goff, most of that is PR rather than actual people doing work.
Yeah.
But the mayor is only one vote around the council table. Where the mayor has an advantage is the committee system. And a lot of people still don't realize this exists. But when you vote your 20 councillors and the mayor, so you've got 21 people around the table, they make a governance decision on some bylaws or budgeting, and the vote goes for or against, 11-10 or 12-9, whatever it is. There's committees. Now, the mayor creates those committees and decides which councillors are going to be on them. And those committees are things like, there's around 13 of them, parks and arts, climate. I think there's, there might actually be an animal management one. I can't remember. But anyway, there's 13, and sorry, there's been so much going on that I can't remember them all off the top of my head. But there's two really powerful ones, and I should use those as an example. These committees decide how budgets are going to be spent and how things are going to be governed in those certain areas. So the mayor, being in that position, can put councillors onto these committees that the mayor believes will be the right people for that particular association. So at the moment, most of the committees are stacked with what I would say are left-leaning councillors, because that's the way Phil Goff wants it. I'll be the opposite. There's no point denying it. I'm a centre-right, and I'll be making my appointments to suit that. So that's where the power of the mayor can come in and decision-making. Two of the committees, one's called a CCO Oversight Committee, and the other one is called the Appointments Performance Review Committee. They are basically in charge of the CCOs, the council-controlled organisations, which is Watercare, Panuku, Unlimited, and Auckland Transport. Now, those committees are very powerful, but they don't really do anything. And that's what's got to change. So I'll be making sure they flex their muscle and do that. So that's some of the powers the mayor has. The mayor has the influence to make changes by example, and that's just a leadership thing. But legislation and laws, the mayor can't do much about. Like this new legislation for housing, for intensification, that's law. I can push back, I can make a lot of noise, I can get the councillors to back me, I can use the office, I can use it as you and I can't call a press conference and start barracking at the government. The mayor can, because the mayor should be representing what the people want. And if the people say, we don't like this, then as mayor, I'll be going, right on then, let's go. We don't like this. That's my job as the mayor of the people, is to say, hey, the people do not want this government. And so I'm representing them. And actually, there's been some councillors who've been really good, who've gone against their own instincts of voting for something because their local constituents wanted it.
Wow.
And like Desley Simpson is a great example in Ōrākei. She's wanted to vote against something, but because she got all the feedback from her people and they said, no, we want it, she's had to go, okay, I'm voting yes.
Wow.
And that's what the mayor should be. The mayor should be the same. The people don't want this, right? Government, hear me roar. And that's the power that the mayor has. So yeah, it is limited, but there's also that influence part. So,
and influence is actually quite important.
Oh, it is.
So just tell me what your thoughts are on the three waters while we're talking about things that you can have influence over.
Well, I despise the idea. I think it's terrible that they're going to basically steal our assets. I think Mayor Goff taking the part payment as a no strings attached payment was wrong. They're trying to frame it as it's okay. It was just a bit of money to help us do. Sorry, there's no such thing as a free lunch.
No.
So if I can find it in the budget, I'll be giving that money back and saying to the government, no, thanks. So you can have that back. We don't want any part of it.
Yeah.
I also really dislike, again, the co-governance side of things. To set up these entities and then say half of the people running the entity will be there on DNA democracy. That does not fly with me. I hope the majority of Auckland agrees with it. They won't. There's some who love it. Yeah. But if the majority said we don't like it, and I guess that's the mandate of voting, people will say, no, we agree with you, so here's our vote. And we go from there. So no to Three Waters.
Yeah. And I just think as well, like lots of people you just don't know what you don't know. You know, for example, if you're not being able to get out there and be, you know, if people aren't seeing you and not hearing you, how do they know? You know, how do they know? They don't know what they don't know. So that's why, like, I feel like with my position or influence, I suppose, I don't want to be an influencer who talks about fake tan and teeth whitener. If I want to influence in any way, it's like, let's fix this place. Let's you know, like I'm thinking about my kids and my family and the generations to come, and even us.
I can see you being on one of the panels.
What's that? Oh,
I could see you being on one of our panels, you know, our community panels. Well, no, you know, the mainstream media are frustrating, and I guess that's what you're leaning towards with the coverage. Yes. It is annoying, but what they do is they base it off a very lazy polling system. Yeah. It happens in central, it happens in local. Yeah. And the polls are, they call them scientific, but at the end of the day, it's only anywhere from 500 to 1,000 people, and yet there's 1.1 million voters in Auckland. Crazy, but what the media do is, because they're so lazy, instead of instigating their own polls, they just grab a poll and go, oh, well, that one was done. Okay, 500 people said they want this person and that person, they must be the front runners.
And that's the percentage.
Well, yeah, unfortunately that's lazy and it's inaccurate, but what it does is it creates that sheeple system, because then all the other media start to follow. Yeah. And then the public follow.
Yes,
because then you get the ones who are scared of split voting.
Yes, exactly.
They try to play strategy and they go,
absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, well, if Craig's, and we'll use me as an example, if Craig's polling here, well, then we better give our vote to the other guy.
Yeah, yeah.
But if they realize there's actually 1.1 million voters out there, and if they all went, actually, no, we're going to vote for who we want, not for who the media tell us.
Yeah, yeah.
That's when we'll get change.
And I just wish everybody would turn off their TV, and I wish that everybody, if they saw an article pop up online and it said it was written by Stuff, that they would just delete it. Stuff, I'm sorry, but they are rubbish journalists, absolutely rubbish. They, even in my group, you know, they just like little bottom feeders. They're in my group and they'll find things to write stuff about. And it's like, go get your own stories and your own material. Don't come into my group and find like, oh, they make me so mad. Anyway, it's the influence, because, you know, if people are, and the clickbait, so if people are clicking on the thing because it's, oh, you know, scary, or they, you know, fear mongering, which we all know that the blooming media do, you know, they're getting that information fed into them. My job, in my mind, I've just made this job for myself, is to get this message out, get some truth out there, like create some balance, and, you know, and use this community to just get some truth out. So that's what I feel like this is today. I just want people to hear your side of it, because I've seen that they've just completely snubbed you in the media, and they just continuously, I see the continuous attacks on you. So I think, okay, what are they worried about? Let's go and see, let's go find out.
Yeah, it's I appreciate that, and it's interesting the way they do it. You know, I've had a little joke of what's the difference between a journalist and a snapper. Well, one's a scum-sucking bottom dweller, the other one's a fish.
Oh, that is perfect. That is perfect.
And even though I do journalism, I'm not news journalism, and that's why I never will be. Yeah. It's interesting that they pick who they believe that the people should hear from. Yeah. But often journalists spend more of their time these days giving opinions rather than what it used to be of asking people in powerful positions questions and then telling the people what was said, they give their opinion. Yeah. And we see that more and more every day when you either open Herald or Stuff or Newsroom or Radio New Zealand or whatever it is, you see that word at the top, opinion.
Opinion piece, yeah.
And then you read who wrote it. It's like, but you're one of the journos.
Yeah.
So you're
I know,
giving an
and they
opinion
can't, how
again.
can they even call themselves journalists? Honestly,
Yeah,
I just don't feel like they should even be
they've
allowed to
changed.
title.
Yeah,
They have
it's
changed.
changed a lot.
There's
Yeah.
no investigative journalism anymore. It's just not there anymore. So
Well,
I
and
think,
if there are a couple still around, they get lost
yeah.
in amongst it, and
Mm,
that's sad because some of them probably are genuine about it. But
mm,
yeah.
mm. Okay, well, I mean, that is a really good oversight of what you're about, what you want to do, and like it just gives people a good idea about who you are. I think if we go on too long, we might lose people. So,
Yes.
but what can we do? I mean, we've got how many days now have we got?
We're basically 7 days, 6 days. What's a lunchtime, October the 8th.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me.
On October the 4th,
yeah,
is the last day you can post.
Okay, all right.
To
So
trust the New Zealand
notes.
Post. Yes.
Yeah,
so I wouldn't trust New Zealand Post anymore from this day on.
Yeah.
I would take my ballot to one of the pop-ups, which I believe are in Countdown, libraries. But the elections, I think there's if you just type Auckland election drop-off in Google, it'll show you where in your area.
Okay.
And you can also do special votes because it's been a massive number of people have not received their papers.
Yes, I didn't.
They can go to just type in haven't received papers or Auckland voting papers. It won't take much searching. You can find out where to go do the special vote.
Yeah.
And it's worth doing. I mean, the apathy in Auckland is bad.
Well, I think people have lost hope. Honestly, Craig, I think people have lost hope. They feel like
and that could be it.
Can't do anything. You know, like, and I think that for me personally, it stems from the top. Seeing that everything that we've asked for, everything we've begged for, has been completely, like at the top. We all know who we're talking about. We don't get listened to. They just do whatever the heck they like, and it doesn't matter what the people want or say. They do what they like.
And a perfect example of that is Auckland Transport.
Yep.
And every have your say that Auckland Council puts out, they're all predetermined outcomes, and they don't do what we want, and that's got to change. So that's why I want people to vote. If they're sick of it, then vote. And I get what you're saying. They've had, and they just go, shrug their shoulders, throw their hands up, and I can't be bothered. But then you'll keep getting the same. You've got to make a stand now. And take the chance that the stand will work. So that's what I believe in, that it's all about the people, and we've got to get me in there. So I wouldn't trust posting anymore. Do your special vote, go to the branches where they show you on the website, do your vote there, and put in the tick and get your name counted. If there's less than 300,000 people voting, that'll be very, very sad. That's a third of our voters.
Tell me, just quickly, who's left even in the race anyway?
Well, every candidate is still there apart from Viv Beck and Leo Molloy. So the crazy man Molloy dropped out ages ago, and Viv dropped out only a couple of weeks ago. Sadly, she dropped out too late because her name's still in the system. And she will get votes from people who don't realize. And so that's a wasted vote. So really, there's three main mayoral candidates at the top, but the people don't need to know about the other two.
Yes, that's true. That is true. No, you got my vote. Okay,
there we go.
So now I'm going to put a little bit of information at the top of this live stream so that people can actually, when it goes live, so that people can actually see where to go. I'll Google that information that you suggested about where to get your special votes done and all that. So try and make it as easy as possible. And guys, just get out there and do your voting, because we are the enforcers of change. Like, if we don't actually stand up and do anything, your one vote is your voice. If you don't have a voice, like a public voice, go and have your voice with your vote. So
and look, I like the Kiwi attitude of the underdog. I consider myself to be the underdog, the Kiwi battler. I want Kiwis, as they normally do, to back that sort of person. And Auckland is actually a good place. Auckland is a cool city. We've got issues that we've got to work through, but I really want to make the bad things good and the good things even better. And we can do that, but you've got to be voted in to do it. So you're right. Let's get people excited and enthusiastic to tick that box, get the underdog in there, and let's make some changes for the people.
Very good. All right, no pressure, guys, but vote Craig Lord for mayor. All right, so I'm just going to say ta-ra to you now, and I'm going to just stop this record, and then we'll have a little chat. But okay, so thanks for watching, girls, and we'll talk to you all again really, really soon.